And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is David Paris, who had a conversation with a spirit during his near-death experience, which we're going to learn about and more. David, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So in March of 2020, I was one of the first people with COVID in New York City, the epicenter, and I didn't think I had it at first, but the doctor said, there were virtual visits back then. They said, yeah, you don't have it. Then one morning, I went to get something to eat at the fridge, went to sleep in front of the fridge, woke up 2 hours later, barely able to breathe, and thought, yeah, maybe I need to get this checked out after all. I went to the hospital. Sure enough, they're like, oh, yeah, you definitely have COVID. I went from like struggling to breathing to like actually getting there and not breathing at all. And they gave me oxygen. I was like, oh, I think I've been without oxygen for like for a week now. And they didn't even know. And at the time I thought, okay, this is only for old people who have to worry. I thought I was fine. And then every single day, there were more and more hallucinations happening. I was fighting with people that weren't there. And apparently my health got worse and worse. And finally, they intubated me. And in my last words, my sister said, only 20% of people wake up after getting intubated. But even I remember that thought thinking, it'll be all right, no problem. Um, and then day later, they noticed that my health went from really bad to even worse. And they put me on an ECMO machine. And for those people who don't know, that's like what they do for heart surgery. They do the work of your heart and your lungs, so your heart and lungs can rest. Because apparently, I had lungs of concrete, not abs of steel. It was not a good situation. And then in those next few days, apparently my heart stopped 4 times, and I don't remember that happening because I was, they gave me all the drugs to intubate me. I was in a medical coma, but and I don't know when this happened. But I don't know if it's like, I thought at the time I was divorced and didn't have kids and on the other side of a performing career. And I thought I wanted to die. I was like, but whatever happens in life, I'm ready to go. And then I remember the moment in that space where it was clear to me that this spirit told me, yeah, it's time for you to go. I'm sorry. And we were in a theater and the spirit was on theater. It kind of looked like a Buddha, but it was like a Japanese morphed face. And it spoke to me without words saying, you're going to go, and directed me to the exit sign off the stage. Sorry, it gets, even his 3.5 years ago, still feel it. And I remember the moment of realizing sometimes people think they want to die, but I've been afraid to die my whole life, what it would mean like to go into nothingness. I don't have a religious background and so forth. And I said, oh, I went into my panic that I've had panic attacks my whole life around death. And I immediately said to the spirit, save me. That absolutely not. I absolutely, whatever, I'm not going to die. And the spirit painted a crescent moon on the side of his face that indicated to me the sadness. He was compassion, saying, I'm sorry, you have to go. I'll never forget it, because it's like, I don't know what to say about it, but in that moment I pleaded with the spirit. I said, please do whatever you can. I'm just not willing to die. And the spirit heard me and said, okay, I'm going to give you the tiniest, smallest chance, but you're going to have to fight longer and harder than you ever have in your life. And I said, listen, I'll do whatever it takes. I remember that thought. And then over the course of what felt like years, if not months or something like this, I remember being out to sea, just struggling to hold on to a ship. I remember being in a lonely field for endless amount of times, just trying to stay alive. And it was the decision that I didn't want to die. I thought I did before the experience, but afterwards I was like, no. And they said, the medical professionals there afterwards, when I finally did wake up, they were amazed that I came so close. My markers were 30 times worse than all these other people who actually did die, and said it was quite a miracle that lived, but I remember it was a decision. It wasn't a miracle. It was like the inner will to survive. And then, if I'm going to be fair, not all of it was scary and rough. Some of it was I have a dance partner. I'm an acrobatic dance professional as well as a school teacher, and we were on America's Got Talent. And I love salsa dancing, and she put on all of my most famous performances playing in my ear as I was in a coma. And people say, oh, they're in a coma, they don't know what's going on. Let me tell you, I know exactly what's going on because my dreams were beautiful. I was like dancing in these like great events and achieving everything I always wanted to achieve, and had a wonderful time. And even though parts of it were scary and rough, parts of it were a connection to something. I'm a semi-spiritual person, but I'm agnostic. And I could say when I was there, I felt connected to something that you don't feel connected to in this world. And you come back to this world, and it's really tough because when you're in the other world, I don't know what the words are, but it's something. And when you come back here, it's so full of pain and suffering and grief, and you want back in that other world. It's like I remember there was because when you're in that other world, the world is metaphors. It's not this consciousness. It's a different consciousness. But I remember like after some time of being dreaming, I remember being in a library in which I saw the spirit who was telling me to stay in the spirit world. And I said, no, I'm ready to go back to the world. And the spirit was telling me, are you sure? It was this old little short man on top of like thousands of books. And later somebody told me that's a metaphor for a book of life. I don't know if it's true. I can't say. Maybe it was just, I was a religion major in college, so maybe maybe it was like it seeped in, even though I haven't touched religion in 30 years. But it was there, and I remember telling the spirit, "No, I'm ready to return." And I was happy with that decision. I have been ever since. But I can also feel the hole in my heart because when you taste that special world, this world is very hard.
Do you feel like that world is like a world of bliss? Like, are you just blissed out, or is it more just kind of
No,
peaceful and all your problems are gone?
I feel it's really odd. I think it's the way I try to describe it to people is, I didn't necessarily believe in souls and such, but your soul exists in a place where it's not this. It's just different. It's not bliss. It's not. It's. I don't know I don't have words for it. But for me, my experience wasn't bliss, but it was connection. It was something of a belonging. And yeah, peace to some degree, like the type of discord that you experience in this world doesn't exist in that world. So yeah, peace and connection, I would say. My experience was, at least. Some would say it's the drugs. I don't know. I can't argue whether it's one or the other. Um, but what I can say is my experience was no, I was on the other side, and the other side is beautiful.
I can see how people will say it's the drugs, but
Yeah.
when you have such an emotional response to that
So,
conversation, to me, that means it wasn't the drugs.
yeah. I know it wasn't. I just say it because I know there'll be people who say it was. My experience, I wasn't a believer before, and I was someone who always feared death. And it's not too, when you experience it, it changes everything. And to me, near death was, you know, a friend of mine says I'm crazy to say this. He says some tough words to me, but it was great. Like near death taught me a spiritual connection that exists. It also taught me how shallow I was living my life. Up until that moment of death, I had only one ambition, which was to be the best acrobatic dancer in the world. And I won 7 championships. Not that I didn't make the finals, but semifinals, pretty good. America's Got Talent, and toured the world, and it was really good. And I really put all my friends and family aside, and anyone that wasn't part of a mission to get to my desire for self my ego self, I just put aside because that wasn't part of my mission. And I remember in my dream, I met another spirit who, well, before the spirit, I had this experience which said, okay, you've been dancing, you've been doing all these shows, but you still have a chance for that one elusive thing that you've always wanted. And to me, the metaphor was a diamond. And I said, I had to take this convertible, the bottom of the world, and take it all the way to the top. And this spirit told me, if you do this, you're going to have to run people over. I was like, no problem. I've done that my whole life. So I took the convertible, ran over whoever I needed to, and I took this diamond to the top of the world. And after decades of searching for greatness at all points in my life, I finally was so excited to experience nirvana or whatever that was going to be, some glorious experience. And instead of that, there is an Indian spirit that I'd never seen before, who had a sword and sliced me in half with one arm, and then with the other arm indicated how many universes existed, that was showing me the depth of an infinite amount of universes that existed. And it became so clear to me how shallow I've lived my last 30, 40 years. I'm 52 now. So like most of my life, I lived pretty shallow. And I understand why I did it. But when you see the depth of the world as a spirit cuts through you, my ego was done. And from that moment forward, when I woke up, I resolved to say, "Oh, I actually need to live life different." And it's not that I still do dance and I still do shows, but I don't do it for my own self-grandization, I think is the word. I don't do it for my ego. I do it because it's connecting, and it could be a personal ambition. I don't do it, and my spirit has changed, and that happened because I was near death. I don't know if you need near death to do that. I don't know if that spirit came to me, but I know that life has not been the same ever since.
Well, since that's not your goal in life, do you have a mission now, or what have you discovered? What you think you should be doing?
Yeah, I have a few spiritual people who said, I was just like, okay, does this mean I'm on a mission? And they all said the same thing to me. They said, you now get to choose what you want to do. And I hit a big piece of depression, PTSD from the experience, and I had no choice but to try to find what would not sink me, because I suffered more than I ever had in my whole life. I thought I knew what depression was, and it turned out that was a cold. What I really had, severe depression, is beyond. I didn't know what it was till I felt it. And when I experienced that, it really lasted for about 2.5 years of needing to, my my ambitions for my life was, what can I do to stop feeling so much pain? And it was odd because I asked to come back to this world, and all I experienced was pain. And there were 3 or 4 things that helped me, that one might call it a mission, but it's not really a mission to me. It was finding a better purpose for life. And that also solved and helped me with my depression, which was connecting to people, like making a decision to stop. Just all my life I'd be with somebody and I'd be thinking, all right, what could I really be doing right now? I wasn't like giving myself to the person or the moment. And if it was, it was almost like, it was almost to try to get somewhere, and just giving that shit up, and not wanting to need to be somewhere, and just uh, giving that up, finding creativity, and as much as I can. So connection, creativity. I wrote. I took a break off of my job as a school teacher, which I did for 27 years, and I wrote 14 books in the last 14 books in the last,
That's
um
amazing.
thank you, for the last 3 years. And they're self-published. Some of them don't do well, but there are a few that I've sold a few thousand copies, that because my last 5 years as a school teacher, as a social emotional director, and I learned a lot about how, it's similar story. For 20 years, I taught English, and I was good at it, but I was just like, how much am I really helping kids? And then I moved to social emotional learning and made a big difference as that. Um, so I'm not totally terrible. Being egotistical, I did give myself a lot to improving the world as a teacher, but then I was like, I know a lot about how to do this right because I'm Brooklyn, you know. I don't know if it comes out of my voice. Some people hear the accent, some people don't. But I'm Brooklyn, and in Brooklyn, it's like you got to be tough as a school teacher, but you got to be loving. And you got to be both. So my social emotional learning directives were all about like, you know, what does it take to include people in an experiential, democratic community that we can all grow together instead of just preaching about what kids should do. And I know that works. And I needed to write those books, and I wrote them, and they're doing well. So some might call that a mission, but if I'm being honest, it was less about a mission and more about a choice. What do I need to do to heal to be in this world? Because it's not easy when you experience the other world.
When you're at the moment where you were giving a choice, do you think you could see how many people would say, okay, I guess I'll just go to the other side and
All
forget
of them
this
do.
place?
All of them do it. I could see, yeah, absolutely. I know it was,
And
yeah,
why would it be so easy to give up and just cross over?
it's hard. A great question. Um, I don't have a quick answer other than I know for me, my yeah, it's too easy. I remember how easy it was, and even the love the spirit gave me to tell me it's okay. It's okay, you're gonna die, there's no choice. I know the certainty in which the spirit told me that it would have been easy to just give up and accept it. But, you know, my whole life I've experienced panic. I grew up agnostic. And the moment I realized at 8, 9 years old that I could be dead instantly, I've had terror attacks thinking about death ever since. And the moment panic sits in, it wasn't a choice to me to say, oh, maybe if I had a religious background, I would have said, okay, I'm going back to God, so be it. But it wasn't that. The spirit pointed to the exit sign and saying, you know, there's no like behind that exit sign, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing, you know. So like, yeah, I was like, that is not an option, you know, like it might have been different given I love life, you know, I love life so much. So part of it was not wanting to die, and part of it was wanting to live. Although, if I'm being honest, I think it was more I didn't want to die than I wanted to live. Like I remember that moment of saying, no, no, no way. There's no chance I'm gonna. And the spirit told me, sorry, you're dying, you know, in the most compassionate, loving way possible. But yeah, I think it was just panic overriding. It wasn't a decision. It was pure panic ridden. I will do anything. I don't, have you ever had a panic attack about death?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you would know if you did. So like when people have that, I know I'm not the only one. When people have that, they just need to run. They need to like get out of the situation. And like, so there are probably listeners out there know what I'm talking about. Like, and in that, there's no thought. There's just pure panic. It was kind of a beautiful experience when I was so I was in a month in a coma, and then a month in ICU, and then a month in rehab in the hospital. And in the rehab, I'll never forget, I met this amazing therapist. It was funny, like when I was in the ICU, I cried when I woke up, maybe 6 to 10 hours a day, just grief, 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 grief. And they'd always ask me to stop crying. I was like, yeah, okay, I just hide and keep crying because it was so sad and hard to digest what happened to me or digest coming back to worlds, whatever it was just grief. And it was bottled up to some degree. And then when we went to, I was assigned a therapist, thank goodness, when I went to the rehab hospital. And the moment I was there, she really changed everything. I'm so grateful to her because I was able to let out all the feelings, and then more. We just talked about death every single day. We had a session every day, and all we did is talk about death. And I was still experiencing panic. And she was, as an agnostic, even though I experienced the peace and serenity of the other side, I would also was struggling at times with, wait, maybe I just made that whole thing up. And maybe there is, maybe once you taste that potential into nothingness, the whole world seems scary. And instead of having a terror attack once every few years, it was like every 15 or 20 minutes. It was not fun. And my therapist did something super interesting, which I don't know if it's good for everybody, but it was good for me. She had me just step into the terror for the first time in my life. I always felt like I needed to run from the terror, and she said, "No, actually, step into the terror." And I became very clear that the terror was less about an existential crisis and more a fear of losing my body. That the moment I recognized terror for the physical fear of my body going, but not necessarily the thoughts around it, which were existential, like what, because, and then she explained to me, like, look, I know you're not religious, but do you really know what's going to happen afterwards? And I go, well, actually, I have an inclination that something's there, you know? And then once I could rest in the terror, feel the terror, which was not fun, and again, I don't recommend this for everybody who has terror attacks, but for me, I really wade into it a few times with her and then afterwards. And then 3 years later, no, I've never had a terror attack again. It was done. It was gone.
That's
My
great.
relationship with death is completely different. I don't fear death at all. I just want to have the best life possible, and don't exist in that place.
Since your near death experience, have you noticed that you have any new abilities that could be considered psychic that you didn't
I
have
wish.
prior?
I totally wish. I wish. Yeah, I wish. I really like. I wanted to. It's funny. I met with all the religious people, and I met with one shaman who was just like, "Look, near death is gonna bring you closer spiritually. It's gonna totally change you." And man, I was totally excited to like. I've always been looking for like proof of God and proof of something. And it's like, oh, the shaman said it's gonna be like this. And I could tell you I did spiritually change in every way, but it's not because it wasn't psychic. It was just my own connection to my own spirit, which is like, the part of, I think most people have their intuition. When you follow your intuition, you feel something connected. And all those experiences are like, all right, clearly something exists. I don't know what it is, but something's there. So yeah, it was just being aware of what I knew already, as opposed to having a stronger link. But what did happen spiritually is because I'm on constant death row, to be honest. Like, being on comment, it makes me more emotionally sensitive, and connected to like when you face terror and you face all of had to face and still do face all of my pain in the world and all that which keeps me from happiness. It was not psychic, but it was a positive spiritual journey of, oh, I've been living my life thinking I need to get somewhere instead of appreciating what is.
Has your friends or family commented to you since the experience? Wow, David, you're a completely different guy now.
All of them, everybody. Well, the biggest thing is people. It's funny. I didn't know I was as loved as I was. And people sometimes you don't know until you have a. I benefited from having a funeral, and that where everybody says nice things and and get to like and actually experience it. So part of the reaction is people are just so happy I'm alive. To be honest, I didn't know. I was so caught up in my own head that I couldn't appreciate other people appreciating me. So part of my experience with friends and family is such as, oh, they're more expressive of their love for me. But as far as their comments about me, they would, my dance partner, who I spent a lot of time with, my ex-wife, um, I think she'd have a few things to say. She says, I'm way more sensitive, a little grouchy. She said the old New Yorker has like really come out in me, where I'm like, I express myself way more strongly. But everybody's noticed that, yeah, I will do anything for anybody now. And I used to put myself first. So, somebody needed a place to stay, and I stayed in somebody else's house. Their house got burned down, so they stayed in my place for 2 months as I went to stay with somebody else. That's my best example. I don't have a lot of those, but like I do have, like, people notice that I'm more available now, and are grateful because I did push people away before, and they say now, most people say that. Some people say because I still do acrobatic dance, I still try to pursue excellence. And they still say, my best friend, Brian, he says, man, you're just going back to your old self and such. But I don't think that's true. Uh, I think, uh, I think I do what I did before, but I do it with more love and without needing it to be successful. I do it because I love to do it. And that small distinction, acting out of love instead of acting out of searching for love, is clear on everything I do. My dances are different now. My artistic expression. Zoe and I, my dance partner, we just did a new show for a salsa gala, and I mean, to be honest, sometimes it's hard because we used to be semi-famous, in our community, and now we're not. We're like older. We're like, and it's not the same. But people, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe people are just happy I'm alive. I can't tell the difference between the connection I feel with people because maybe I'm different, or maybe it's because they're just happy I'm alive. But consistently, I feel more connected to people, and people feel more connected to me. Um, yeah,
A way I'm kind of interpreting what you're saying is before you were dancing in search of love or
absolutely.
looking for love, but now maybe dancing is a way of you expressing your love.
100%. Yeah. So dancing, I know I don't look like a dancer, but I'm pretty good. If you check it out, I was kicked out of a salsa class when I started because the teacher didn't want my name associated with his dance school, and that just tells you a little bit about my persistence. I don't give up. But yeah, I got pretty good. But whenever I was good, it was because I was searching for the respect I would get if I danced a certain way or won a competition and such. And I still want to win competitions. I still want to look good. But I do it with love now. I do it with love, self-love. I appreciate people who are better than me. I don't live in a place of needing. Yeah, I used to think the world was limited with love. And now it's not easy to come across to live in a world where there's limited resources, because that tricks you into thinking love is limited. But love is not limited, and even the experiences of experiencing joy is not limited. We can enjoy so much more than I thought we needed to. I thought we had to get somewhere. So yeah, my perspective of that changed, because when I woke up, I could tell you from the very beginning, I couldn't get out of bed for a month. I wiggled for 2 to 3 weeks or something like this. My left side was paralyzed for almost a year. And I told my dance partner, look, all I can do is move my arm like this. And she said, all right, that's what we're going to do for the next 2 years. We're just going to move like this. And I'm used to throwing her in the air and doing spectacular stuff. But instead, I remember just watching the beauty of my hands and experiencing this was the same pleasure I'd get from getting a standing ovation for thousands of people. And I was like, oh wow, my perspective was off. It's the expression. And I finally got it after being near death, that my perspective was off. And part of it's the pollution of the mind and the way we grow up around needing to think we need to be somebody rather than appreciating what is. But I was just like, oh, I love my movement. And then honestly, I could only wiggle. And my first salsa dance, it was funny, it was on TV. They caught it on Channel 4. Uh, I was holding my nurse really close as she stood up for the first time. And she thought it was tango that I was holding her, embracing it. But I was just trying not to fall, man. I hadn't been on my legs in like in 7 weeks. I was like this. But within seconds, I moved from holding her to just swaying, and we had music playing in the background. And I was just it was as good as any of my best shows. I mean, maybe not as good. There's something special about a standing ovation. That's like phenomenal. But it's not that different. You feel, I now go to a therapist, and one of the things he's helped clear up in my brain is that when you feel fulfilled and you feel connected with your expression and who you are, you don't need anything else. That all stuff is nonsense. It's when that standing ovation that Lord, there's a while where I felt I would never get a standing ovation again, you know? I have in the last 2 years. Sometimes people are just glad I'm alive and such, but I still put on pretty good shows that are not as good, but pretty good as I used to. But the experiences, and I still aim for that. But in truth, we just did a show. Only one person stood. I noticed. I looked who's standing out there at the end of the show. Oh, you one person. That's great. But I wasn't almost, I was just as happy as one of my other shows because we did something. We put like 30% of our routine was dance, you know? I'll put it, if anybody's interested, just you can look me up on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. We're gonna put the show up soon, but you'll see that we do more dance now than we used to. Partly it's because I can't move as well as I used to, and so I can't do acrobatics for 4 straight minutes like I used to. But the experience is the same because I'm expressing in this show is like, okay, this is who I am. I'm bringing the spirits, I'm bringing them down. I'm sharing how to break out of our patterns. We had a theme for what we were doing. In the old days, it was look how great look how great I am. Look at how cool what I'm doing. And it's fine. It was great. That's what I wanted back then. But now I want to express something. And just in the expression, and it's weird, after the show, we didn't get a standing ovation, but more people came to us and cried, said, "Yeah, we cried when we saw your routine." And that never happens. People say you're great, but they don't cry. They cry when they look at the bill, maybe, but like they'll cry like it was a true emotive experience. And I know we brought the spirits that day to our show.
I'm not aware of what acrobatic dancing is, so can you kind of break it down for me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Acrobat, it's a bit obscure, little nuanced world. It's kind of what you see two people do in Cirque du Soleil sometimes. But our version of it is we combine a little bit of ice skating lifts and ballet lifts and maybe some of the hustle days or salsa tricks. And we actually make those tricks musical and we put dance into partner acrobatics. If you look up Paradiso Dance, our company name on YouTube, you can see us a little bit of what we do or our website, Paradiso Dance. But like sometimes what we do is, our first piece was a poem, a Walt Whitman poem called Sleepers, where we our one circus woman said, "Hey, do acrobatics, partner acrobatics to this poem." We're like, "All right." And then to this day, we still perform it because there's something beautiful about metaphorical, really, about two people doing more than they could do on their own and something spectacular. And there's a metaphor for connection, communication, striving, and expression that you don't get. It's like when you see somebody dance by themselves, so that can be good, but there's something special when you see two people do something. There's something more. And so acrobatic dance is really combining kind of what you would see in ice skating or maybe so you think you could dance some of that stuff uh, and doing it musically, doing it artistically, which I think we do pretty well.
It would be amazing if you could tell your story of being given a choice through dancing. Like your partner could be the spirit giving you the choice.
So you're the best, man. It's the best interview. So I actually is exactly what I'm working on right now. Is there's a song called "Water No Enemy" by Fela, the African funk guy from the '70s and '80s. He has this wonderful song that is a spiritual journey, and I'm bringing all my circus friends to tell the story. Where we are just rehearsing earlier tonight with the doctor who's going to lift me from the floor and the COVID spirit coming and battling to stay alive. And we're working. And I wish I could have did it 2 or 3 years ago when it might have been more apropos, but man, I couldn't lift. I had no control over my left body. But and then ultimately how we have a choice. And it's so cool they picked up on that. So it's coming. Collecting New Yorkers in one rehearsal space is not easy, let me tell you, but I'm pretty close to making it happen.
Well, once you do, make sure you make a video of it so we can all see it because I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, man, I'll send it right to you. I want to. It's funny. I had this experience, and it's powerful, but I want to make it even more powerful. Like, I know so much information. I think, thank you for letting me share my story on your podcast. And then also, there's 5 or 6 other stories I'm not saying that I wanna put out there artistically, one of which is PTSD is like, it's funny, I'll never forget how much suffering I was going under, and I hadn't seen my high school football friends, played high school football in 30 years, and they had a dinner for me, and I'll never forget, sitting down after an hour saying, "Yo, I gotta go, man. This is too much," because any stimulus was too much for me, and my friend says, "Dave," is the quarterback for me, he goes, "Dave, I was there at 9/11. I was there, and I still have days. This was like, I guess 20 years later. I still have days I can't get out of bed. I'm wrecked in pain. You're not alone, man. We're all suffering the same thing." And
Wow.
you just, yeah, totally. And then I had another friend who was also there in 9/11 and was also there in the Las Vegas attacks too. And he's just like, dude, I struggle with PTSD every day. And the moment I knew I was not alone, I can't tell you it was better. Well, it was better. I can't tell you it went away, but it was better because I know I wasn't alone in it. And so that's one of the 5 different angles of the story. That's not just the spirit of near death, but also the the other things like the mental health that is understated in so many people's stories. I know a lot of people who are listening are going to be like, they might know somebody who's going through that, and say, I could say, I used to, when it comes to depression, I used to think, oh, I know what depression is, girlfriend, divorce, who knows what, bankruptcy, whatnot. And it was depressing. It was bad. But when you hit the next level, I'll tell you, you don't know. And, you find people who kill themselves. You find people who had a great life. NBA players have a great life, but they're still struggling with. I remember Terry Bradshaw is my childhood idol, saying he was depressed, and yet he's on like NFL Today, like talking about, and I was like, oh my God, there's this totally undercurrent of a disease that now I understand. And I just like, there's some message, I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but some message, well, a lot of people do it, and there's a lot more awareness now than it used to be. But I want that included in my piece as well. And my dance partner, she's with her son. They stay with me a bunch, and we train what this piece is going to look like. So anyway, long-winded. Let me make it short. It's coming. It's going to be next level art, I hope. And if it's not, let me know, and I'll keep working on it till it is, because that's who I am.
If you had a friend that was suffering over the loss of a loved one, what kind of advice would you give?
I have friends. I had recently. I have a friend who told me he was diagnosed with death, with cancer, and he's had this beautiful family. He didn't like my answer, what I said to him, because I told him to actually embrace it. Like, I could tell he was running from it, and from my experience, I was just like, listen, there's nothing more beautiful than realizing our short time on Earth. And while it's somewhat tragic, it's tragic, maybe maybe not, to leave the world, you're not leaving anywhere. That's going to be your people are going to be okay, and you're going to be in a better place. And you can live a life of fear and living your last moments frustrated and scared, or you can embrace the love of the people around you at a level that you've never experienced ever before in your life, and you will live better than you ever have before. And that comes from a place where I was close to death. Now, I know my friends like, oh yeah, that's because you feel better now. What do you said? What did you said that before? And I remember every moment I embraced death, which is every day. You feel different. Now, I know that's not answering your question. Your question was, what about grieving someone else? Um, I mean, I'm not an expert at that, but I do know, after I was really well taken care of, I was at NYU Hospital, and to be honest, some of the parts were tough, but I got more care in that 3 months than I did in 30 versions of my life before that. It was amazing what people were doing on my behalf. And I remember because of that, I'm now able to give people who are on their deathbed. My ex-wife's mother's partner was diagnosed with cancer, and and I was by his bedside every day, and I gave him love, and he knew he was ready to die, and he kind of taught me that listen to your body, listen to the truth, and your truth will tell you everything you need to know. Um, so I guess I'm talking about people who are dying. I'm not answering your question. But when I told my dance partner's mom, who was grieving, is you're gonna live with a hole in your heart that that person's missing. I'm not gonna lie and tell you that that person's definitely going to heaven. I'm not sure. I think so, but I'm not sure. But what I can say is you can live if the more you embrace the depth of your pain and live with it and not run away with it, the more you're going to cherish your life and cherish that which you hold dear.
Well, you have a book called A COVID Story. If people want to find out more about it, do they go to your website or Amazon?
First of all, I give it away for free. You want a free hard copy, digital copy, just hit me up, info@davidparisbooks.com. It's not something I'm trying to, I'm just trying to share my story of what really was a community. It was an oral history of my experience. But if you want to buy it, yes, it's on Amazon. Look up my name, David Paris, as an author, and then you'll see a list of 18 different books, and it's one of them. Or you can go to my website, davidparisbooks.com. You can get it there. And yeah, it tells. It's kind of. I wish I should have brought a copy with me, but to me it's beautiful. It tells the if you like this interview, it's my voice, but it's also the voices of the community, a lot of people who are involved in the story. It's actually fun if you found me a little funny or interesting. The book is like that. I purposely made it light and because I wanted uh, wanted people to connect to it, and it has great illustrations of the spirits of the of the different experiences, and yeah, I don't, well, nobody's complained about it to my face, but so far people have enjoyed it quite a lot.
David, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that? And if so, how do they contact you?
It'd be my pleasure to answer any questions, or I'd love to hear feedback on anything we talked about. It was an amazing conversation tonight. Yeah, you can contact me at info@davidparisbooks.com. On Facebook. I don't really check my Instagram because I'm older and I don't do that much. I do have a Instagram account, David Paris Books, but best on Facebook, if you'd like, on Messenger. But my preference is info@davidparisbooks.com. Would be great. I'd love to hear anything you have to say.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it looks like there's one on your t-shirt.
You're hilarious. You're the best. So I have a
More
shirt that
something.
says more reality. So I guess, I wear this t-shirt a lot. I live in Brooklyn and I wear this to start conversations with people. And that's the message. It's like not running away from the feelings, but embrace those. Well, I have a lot of positive messages, but one, if you experience terror attacks, um, you don't have to be ruled by it. There's a way out, and that's to go in. And don't do it on your own, because they say like trauma can like be overwhelming. Do it with the therapist, but there's a way out of it. And I could tell you I really suffered a lot in 2.5 years of severe depression, and I never thought I was going to get out of it. When you're in it, it's like it's the worst, and you don't think it's ever going to end. As the hopelessness comes over you, but with a lot of work, I came out of it. And it's very likely you can too. Through people, through everybody's journey will be different. My journey was connection, creativity, and there's one other that I forgot.
David, thank you for your message, and thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.